Good day. Our topic for today is understanding sexuality orientation, and sexual identity. Now, what is sexuality? It's something that most people have, most people get turned on, have desires, become attracted, and want to do something sexual to themselves or others. It can bring pleasure, joy, and companionship, and some kinds of sex can lead to the creation of children. Listen to yourself. Who do you like? Some just like girls, others just like boys, and others like both girls and boys. Sometimes sexual desire is to do with love and sometimes not. The desires and sexuality you can have can vary over time. It is not unusual that it goes in phases. How much desire you have, who you desires for, and how important sexuality is in your life. Nobody other than you knows how you think and feel about your sexuality right now. Listen to yourself and your body. Sexual norms. What are they? Many norms associated with sexuality are connected with gender. Norms are, roughly speaking, what is considered to be normal, and the unwritten rules which exist on the subject. For example, one preconception is that young men always want to have sex with young women, and that their sex drive is greater than young women. Another preconception is that young women actually mean yes when they say no to young men. LGBT and hetero. A word which is often heard when one talks about sexuality is LGBTQ. LGBTQ is associated with sexuality and is a collected term for homosexual, bisexual, transsexual, and queer people. Here, you can read what these terms mean. First, a homosexual person gets turned on by and or falls in love with people of the same sex. Homosexual girls are usually known as lesbians or dicks and homosexual males as gays. Second, a bisexual person gets turned on by and or falls in love with people regardless of their gender and can therefore be in love and want to have sex with both girls and boys. Trans is a collective name for people with gender identities which do not follow the norms. The term trans encompasses transsexuals, transvestites, intersexuals, transgenders, and drag queen kings. Transvestites are people who like to dress in a manner typical of the opposite sex. Dressing in clothes typical of the opposite sex does not imply that person thinks they were born in the wrong body. Transsexualism deals with gender and not sexuality. A transsexual person can therefore be heterosexual, homosexual, or bisexual. Queer is a concept which is used to describe those who cannot or will not identify themselves as heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, or transsexual. And lastly, heterosexual person gets turned on by and or falls in love with people the opposite sex. Heterosexuality is the form of sexual identity which is considered by many to be normal. What is sexuality? From the time we are born until the time we die, every one of us is a sexual person. Whether we are practice celibacy and abstinence our whole lives, marry and have children, or remain single and develop significant relationship at different times in our lives. We are all sexual. We are born male or females. We are heterosexual of sex roles. We want and need to be significant to others. We want and to be touched and held. Whether we ever have intercourse or not, we are sexual people. Now, why is this important? Most of the time, When we think about sexuality education, we think only of the specifically genital parts of our bodies and lives. Our sexuality is a much larger concept than that. Our sexuality is about who we are, our sense of identity as men or women, how we see our places in the world, and what we believe about our potentials and capabilities. It has to do with biology and psychology, with pleasures and values, and with relationships with ourselves, our friends, and those who might become our partners.
Our topic for today is sexual orientation. What is sexual orientation? Sexual orientation refers to people who are attracted to and desire to date. Gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual, and asexual are all sexual orientations. Gender and gender identity are not the same as sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is concerned with who are romantically, emotionally, and sexual attracted to. It is not the same as gender identity. Gender identity isn't about who you are attracted to, but about who you are, whether you're male, female, gender queer, or anything else. This means that being transgender, feeling like you assign sex is very different from gender you identity with. Isn't the same as thing as being gay, lesbian, or bisexual. Sexual orientation is about who you want to be with. Gender identity is about who you are. There are bunch of identities associated with sexual orientation. People who are attracted to a different gender, for example, women who are attracted to men or men who are attracted to women, often call themselves straight or heterosexual. People who are attracted to a different gender, for example, women who are attracted to men or men who are attracted to women, often call themselves straight or heterosexual. People are attracted to people the same gender often call themselves gay or homosexual. Gay women may prefer the term lesbian. People who are attracted to both men and women often call themselves bisexual. People whose attractions span across many different gender identities, male, female, transgender, genderqueer, or intersex, etc., may call themselves pansexual or queer. People who are unsure about their sexual orientation may call themselves questioning or curious. People who don't experience any sexual attraction for anyone often call themselves asexual. It's also worth noting that some people believe none of these categories adequately describe them. Some people despise the concept of labels, others are more at ease with certain designations than others. It's up to you to determine how, if at all, you wish to label yourself. Aromanticism. What does aromantic means? Aromantic people are not romantically attracted to others. They may or may not be attracted sexually. Aromantic persons are divided into two categories: aromantic sexual people and aromantic sexual people. Other name for aromantic. Aromanticism, like other sexual orientations, exists across a spectrum. There are several terms that people may prefer to further specify how the identity. Demi-romantic people have romantic attraction only after forming an emotional bond with another person. Tetrromantic are achromantic people feel romantic attraction but don't want to have it returned. The attraction may also go away when someone does have feelings for them. Gray aromantic people rarely experience romantic attraction or can do so only under very specific circumstances. Chiromantic people can tell the difference between romantic and platonic attractions. Copio-romantic people are aromantics who want romantic relationships. Aromantic people may also use the shorthand arrow to describe their orientation. What the difference between aromantic and asexual? The phrase asexual is more widely known than aromantic. They are similar but not identical. Romanticism refers to romantic attraction, whereas asexual refers to sexual attraction. Sexual orientation and romantic orientation are two distinct notions. The sexual orientation of an a romantic individual does not make them less or more of a valid member of a romantic group. Adrosexual adrophilia. What does adrosexual means? Adrosexual refers to those who are attracted to masculinity in the burgeoning field of sexual orientation and gender studies. People who are adrosexual may be attracted to anyone who possesses masculine characteristics regardless of gender or sexual orientation. The term adrosexual is derived from the Greek language. The prefer andro signifies man, sexual indicates sexual desire, and empilic is related to with love. Because the term adrosexual is still relatively new, it can mean different things to different people. Some interpret it as a preference for those masculine or male expressions, while others believe it can refer to a preference for those who identify as non-binary. Non-binary people do not identify as either male or gender. Some cisgender women may be define themselves as if they are attracted to cisgender males and trans men. They may identify as heterosexual. Others perceive it as a different form of sexual orientation, such as homosexuality. Demisexuality. Demisexual people are sexually attracted to others only when they have an emotional bond with them. They can be gay, straight, bisexual, or pansexual, and they can identify with any gender. The word demi means half, which can allow to being half sexual and half asexual. Demisexuality is a form of gray sexuality. A gray sexuality person may only experience sexual desire on rare occasions, or they may experience sexual attraction but aren't very interested in sex. Demisexual people do not experience primary attraction, which is the attraction you feel when you first met someone. They only feel secondary attraction, the kind that occurs after knowing someone for a while. Bisexuality. What is bisexual? Bisexuality is defined as a preference for more than one gender. Bisexual people have sexual and or romantic feelings for people of a different gender as well as their own. While this is broad description, bisexual are diverse population. Each person has a unique perception of their sexual orientation. Some people are equally attracted to both men and women, while others prefer one gender over the other. A bisexual person can be in a long-term same-sex or heterosexual relationship, or they can switch back and forth.
Sexuality, genephilia. People who are erotically women, females, and or femininity are known to be genesexual or genephilic. Genesexuality does not specify an individual's gender as termed lesbians would, but simply denotes that they are sexually drawn to feminine qualities. Much like androsexuality, the definition includes people identifying with their referent sexual orientation. A heterosexual man and lesbian woman are genephilic in the way they are attracted to women. Heterosexual is the term used to describe a person who is physically, emotionally, and or romantically attracted to individuals' gender other than their own. For example, a man who is attracted solely to women would be considered heterosexual. Raised this definition that sex and gender are interchangeable. However, heterosexuality actually refers to attraction to gender generalized into spectrum, not a binary. People who identify as heterosexual are colloquially referred to as being straight and are often regarded as members of societal sexual majority. As the members of the hegemonic norms, it is not uncommon for heterosexual individuals to believe that everyone around them is heterosexual. That is the only normal or correct sexual orientation or even its superior to orientations. This belief constitutes heteronormativity and heterosexism and have historical fuel discrimination against those who do not identify with heterosexuality. Further, heterosexual individuals often do not realize the privilege they enjoy in everyday life and then tend to take the ease with which they navigate the public social sphere for granted. For example, heterosexual couple can express expression public, publicly and make case, hug, or hold hands without the fear or ridicule or hostile behavior. Most can have children and start with families that are unequivocally affirmed, recognized, and legitimized by others. They can marry when they wish without facing moral opposition, practice any religion without ostracized, and may apply for any job without fearing the fire based on their sexual orientation. Homosexuality. A person who identifies as homosexual is one who is physically, romantically, and or emotionally attracted to individuals of the same gender with which may identify. A man who is attracted to other men is usually referred to as gay. However, a woman who is attracted to other women may prefer to be called as lesbian. Other people in the LGBTQ are not homosexual, sometimes refer to themselves as gay. Although they may not identifying as gay, while homosexual does not accurately describe the type of attraction felt by someone of the members of the community, the term is often clinical or indicative of physiological disorder or abnormality, and may be offensive to some. More specific terms such as gay, lesbian preferable for everyday use. Society has a habit of labeling those who do not necessarily comply with its set rules as outsiders and ostracized them through association with negative characteristics and hurtful stereotypes. Homophobic labels and behavior include the feeling of alienation among LGBTQ individuals, which makes it more difficult for them to find self-acceptance and comfort. Discriminatory ideology can heavily impact daily life for gay and men and lesbian women. Aside from religious hostility or workplace discrimination, members of the LGBTQ community also face prejudice in healthcare as well. It was been found that many healthcare providers demonstrate both implicit and explicit bias in favor to heterosexual people by assuming that they are at lower risk for certain conditions than homosexual people. As a result, gay men and lesbian women are far less often selected for healthcare coverage than heterosexual. Heterosexuality often imbues people with unfortunate discrimination in all walks of social life. Yet, where there is intolerance, insensitivity, and ignorance from the outside majority, many discovered safety, accept the unique belonging within the LGBTQ community. Individuals who may not feel the mainstream ideal of a gay man, lesbian woman can seek company in the various subcultures of the community. For example, the bear community welcome appreciate men with larger hair bodies and more masculine features, while birds may ridicule or leave out the mainstream community. They can discover a belonging among others who share the predicament of being outsiders within an already marginalized group. Lesbians also have subcultures within the community can help them better identify themselves and find greater sense of belonging. of the several different ways in which lesbians perceive who types and predominantly recognize. But lesbians tend to embody more masculine features, haircuts, and clothing styles, while lipstick lesbians may dress and carry themselves in a more feminine manner. It should be made clear both these terminologies can be viewed as derogatory or homophobic. While some lesbians embrace this label, others do not feel truly fit into the description of either. It is evident that there is no singular look or style that demarcates an individual as gay or lesbian. A study conducted among lesbian and bisexual women regarding the lesbian look most women experience discover style represents them as man individual. Although subcultures provide an outlet for expression of unique styles and characteristics within the LGBTQ, people feel a stronger need to be authentic version of themselves, rather than upholding given norms, stereotypes of the group as whole. Pansexuality. The word pansexuality is derived from the Greek word prefix pan, meaning all people who identify as pansexual or omnisexual. It includes attraction to people who identify as male, female, transgender, intersex, third gender, or anything in between. Being a pansexual does not mean that person is attracted to anyone and everyone, only that they do not prefer any one gender to another. For example, a demisexual pansexual person has a potential to be sexual attractive to any gender, yet cannot feel this attraction prior forming an emotional bond. Hence, pansexual people do not necessarily desire every person they encounter. Like bisexual person, some pansexual individuals have a stronger or weaker preference for a certain gender. However, those within the pansexual community drew a clear line between their sexual identity, bisexual identity, while pansexuality include the attraction to both men and women, and those fall under the bisexuality umbrella. It rejected the gender binary implied by bisexuality. Pansexual individuals are attracted to others falling anywhere on the gender spectrum, opposed to any specific gender. Queer. Sometimes one may perceive the labels of straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, or pansexual to be too confining or feel as thought of these categories truly encompass their sexual orientation. Queer serves as umbrella term for all non-heterosexual, non-cisgender identities. For example, a biased person who does not feel comfortable identifying as bisexual or lesbian woman who does not wish to identify as lesbian can both identify as queer. For those who will feel that they cannot define their sexual orientation or that their feeling of sexual romantic, emotional, or attraction do not fit into a specific category, identifying as queer may ease the tension of a set sexual description. Based on interviews with a self-identified queer woman at the University of California, Santa Barbara, the definition of queer can be seen as a more fluid and specifically non-binary sexual orientation, can be used to describe singular sexual identity or include other identities such as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or pansexual. Given its less rigid and more inclusive definition, many people identify as queer while they are still attempt to understand their sexuality, while others feel that the term their feeling of attraction better than any other. Sexual identity. Sexual identity, it is more general since referred to the way person express who they are as a sex person. It spans the importance has sexual expression has thus that have in person's life, the way they express their sexuality, and any preference they have about the kind of sexual partner they choose. More recently, the concept of sexual identity has come to be focused on the gender of sexual partners that a person prefers. Some argue that this definition attempts to fit or address the issues faced by those who do not fit into the majority heterosexual mainstream. This leaflet aims to speak to some of those non-heterosexual issues. Is sexuality, is sexual identity the same thing? Well, let's talk all about it. In general, most people adopt a sexual identity that matches their sexual orientation. Most heterosexual oriented people identify as heterosexual or straight. Most homosexuality oriented people identify as lesbian or gay. However, there is sizable number of sizable number of people for whom sexual orientation does not coincide with their sexual identity. We can define sexual identity as the label that particularly regarding sexual orientation. For some example, there is political element to their sexual identity. For example, rather than identifying as bisexual, bi equals two. Some people identify as pansexual, pan multiple. This moves away from implication that there are only two sexes, female and male, and two gender women and men. In light of growing visibility of intersex and transgender people, others identify queer to highlight the fluidity and diversity of gender and sexual orientation, and further to reclaim the term queer, gay, and bisexual person. Finally, there is growing experience sexual orientation to particular group, etc. gender of people. Thank you for listening.